Hey guys, welcome back to the Deeper Than Dieting series. This is part 3 where we're going to talk about the body. And I don't just mean the body like the human body. I mean, we're going to move closer to your own body. How does your body communicate with you? And this can be an extraordinary self-exploration if you're on your path to better health. You're learning how to trust yourself with food. This is like the body is my favorite because we're typically not taught how to listen to our hunger and be able to really trust it, and that our body has this incredible wisdom of what to eat, how much food to eat, but we're not really taught that skill of like how to fine tune it. So it's okay if you don't know how to do it. I'm going to share with you why sometimes it gets confusing, why we might feel numb to it, and how to really start interpreting its signals. So I decided to create this Deeper Than Dieting series because as a registered dietitian, I was very stuck when I knew so much about health, but I really struggled with watching myself self-sabotage, feeling like I had to obsess about food all the time, think about food, track my food. And I was like, there's no way that this is the only path to health. Like, there's got to be something else out there. Is everyone struggling like I am, even though I know so much about health? And it really sent me on this path of wanting to understand ourselves on a deeper level. Why do we self-sabotage? Why is it that we feel like sometimes we have to force and force and force with our health just to like get an inch? And I learned so much about the deeper layers of what's beneath the surface, that if we just stay in the world of health and nutrition information, sometimes that might just be all that we need. But if you're feeling that like, I think that that's not all I need. I know so much about health, and I feel like there's a deeper some calling within myself. Like, I feel that there's more that I have to learn about this difficult relationship with myself or my food or my body. I'm so hard on myself. I'm gritting my way through it. There must be more. Let me tell you that there is more. And that's really what I created the series for. I feel so compelled to create this series because it was so influential for my life. And I think that it is probably one of the most fascinating and wildly uncomfortable things that we could explore. They're the different aspects of ourselves. But I think that it really captures what true health is. It's not forcing ourselves into a box of everyone should eat this way. It's really being able to tune in and say, what is the right thing for me right now and for my body? And when that gets confusing and unclear, we form this dependence on somebody else tell me, somebody else keep me accountable. I need to suppress what's happening in here because I just don't trust in it. And so you might not, like I said this in other series, you might not fully believe everything that I say. You might not even want to follow everything I say, and that's totally okay. But if you could take this time to just suspend your disbeliefs or any doubts that you have and just set it aside for a minute and say, I want to be open to doing things differently, we can have a really incredible self-exploration together. So today we are going to talk about the body. In the other series, part 1 was about laying a foundation. And so laying the foundation in part 1, if you missed that, was about having the mindset shifts that you need to have in order to be able to maybe consider even doing this kind of work. So if you missed that, check that out. It's going to give you some really helpful mindset shifts, because sometimes the mindset alone in the dieting industry is what can keep us stuck in the same patterns and cycles. In part 2, we talked about exploring the mind. Most of us haven't really paid attention to what are my thoughts when I go to change my eating habits. What kind of thoughts am I having? And what are even some of the subconscious thoughts that are not even in my awareness that I'm having, that are maybe driving my food choices, that can make it feel like I have a lot of resistance to making change? And so we explore how the mind works and how do we start working with our thoughts. And today in part 3, we're going to explore the body. Why do we feel disconnected from our bodies sometimes, or feel like I don't know how to listen to it when it comes to my eating? I can't feel my hunger. I can't feel my fullness. I can't tell if I'm having a craving. I can't trust my body because I want to snack all the time. Sometimes I diet for a while and then I give up and I'm on and I'm off. So when you learn how to listen to your body, you can be fully present in the moment where you don't have to think and plan about what am I going to eat later, because you trust in the signals of, yes, this is what would be a good choice for me. This is how much my body is telling me to eat. And it's really a skill to practice. If you say, I haven't been able to do this, I can't do this, I love the idea of it, but I can't do that. It's not that you can't do it. We're all built to be able to do it, but you're taking the wrong approach. And I want to share what that wrong approach is. It's the approach that I tried that will probably make it very difficult to do, and what would be a right approach, what has worked for me, what's worked for a lot of my other students, so that you can start perceiving and properly tuning into those hunger signals. And when you do, what you're able to do is let go of the needing to be accountable to like writing and tracking what you're doing, or having somebody else check in on what you're eating. I don't check in on like my students or my clients. I don't monitor what they're eating, because they learn how to trust their own body. So I don't need to hover over them like their mom. Like, did you eat that? Did you not eat that? I used to do that. When I first started as a dietitian, they would have to submit their food logs to me, and I would have to say, what did you eat? And keep them accountable. They needed the accountability because they didn't trust themselves. But now I completely shifted the way that I do things. They learn how to trust themselves. And then instead of them saying, oh, this is what I ate, this is what I didn't eat, out of accountability, what they do is they'll share with me, when I ate this food, this is how my body responded. This is what it was needing. And they watch their eating habits evolve based on how their body told them, did this work for me? Did I feel good? How is this resonating with my body? And by resonating, I mean, like, sometimes my students will say, I've been struggling with, this is a good example. One of my students had really struggled with a sugary mocha coffee drink every morning. And she was like, when we first started in our work together a long time ago, she would submit her food log to me, and sometimes she was able to willpower her way through not eating it, sometimes, or drinking it, and sometimes she couldn't do it. And she'd come back and she'd be like, man, I'm just really stuck on this one. I just cannot shake it. I'm like so hooked on this mocha. And then over time, when I switched my methodologies and I started not giving people this writing down their calories and how much sugar they had and all that, instead I had her starting to tune in and listen to her body and say, how does this drink make your body feel? Notice your body and begin communicating with it. And she wrote down, when I have my mocha, my joints hurt, my body hurts, I get inflammation. This feels terrible. She started getting so tuned into the communication with her body that it actually kicked her mocha habit naturally. She didn't have to force and grit and willpower anymore. She was just very sensitive now to noticing, wow, my body doesn't like that and it doesn't feel good. I lost the craving for it. So it's really cool when you can start sensing and perceiving what's happening in your body. But if you can't do that, it's totally okay. I don't expect that you can do that, because there's a process that you need to go through. And I'm going to break down in this whole video why you can't actually perceive your hunger, why you might feel hungry all the time, why you can't feel your fullness, why you might be unsure if you're being driven by cravings, and why it creates this like distrust of like, is my body against me? Can I trust it? Is it going to deceive me? What if I just listen to my body and I just want to eat pizza all the time? That's what a lot of people say. If I listened to my body, I'd be eating pizza and beer all the time. I have not yet found somebody who actually finds that to be true when they start practicing this stuff. The truth is, they just can perceive what the body is actually wanting, and then they're no longer needing to track, use accountability, or even gritting their way through cravings and fighting. It's very gentle, like listening to what it is that their body is wanting. So I hope this makes sense. It's a little bit confusing to explain if you're not properly perceiving it yet, but I'm going to explain why it happens, why we get disconnected, and how do we start perceiving those signals again. I do really think that this is information that everybody should know. As a dietitian, I think that everybody should know, how does my body communicate what it needs, how much food it needs, but I think that it's really poorly understood. I think right now, like mindful eating or intuitive eating, which is kind of like what does the intuition of my body tell me of how much I need to eat is kind of a hot thing right now, or at least it kind of has been. I remember feeling like when I became a dietitian, I want to practice intuitive eating. That's so cool. Yeah, screw diets. I don't want to do diets. I don't want to be restrictive. But then I would try to intuitively eat and listen to my body. And I was so confused. I was like, I don't know if I'm hungry, if I'm full. I just ate a whole meal. When I look at my meal, it looks like I should be done. When I track my food, it looks like that should be as many calories as I should eat. But I still feel this internal drive to eat more food. I'm really confused. I want to snack all day. And so I loved the idea of intuitive eating, but I didn't feel like I trusted myself enough to be able to do it. And so that's kind of a hard place to be when you're like, I felt like I was on the monkey bars of like, I don't want to track and obsess and do like diets and programs, but I don't trust myself yet, and I want to go to this other side of where I can let go and I can be free and I can listen to my body and trust it and eat what I want and sometimes indulge, but I couldn't trust myself. So I was kind of like stuck in between these monkey bars, not really loving either option. Either I restrict my food and I track it and I count calories because I don't trust myself. That holds me accountable. But it's obsessive and it doesn't really work that well, and I'm not really getting to a place where I'm thriving. Or I let go of control, I listen to my body, I'm more liberal with my eating, I tune in and listen, but I can't tell if I've had too much food, I might be overeating, I don't like where my health is at. So I didn't love either option. I didn't love tracking and I didn't love listening to my body. And so this was really tricky, especially because the listening to the body thing sounds kind of attractive, but if you can't do it, it's really hard. It's really confusing. So what I ended up doing was trying to use more motivation and more accountability by removing the foods from my house where they might be like temptations, and writing down all my food, writing my calories, writing down my protein. And in theory, that's a good idea. Like it held me accountable to like, let's assess what are you really eating and holding myself accountable. But it did, because I didn't understand what was happening in my body, like I didn't understand my hunger, my fullness, my cravings. I was going through these times of being really motivated and then losing control. And I think that the food tracking was kind of perpetuating that roller coaster, because I'd be like really on it, really diligent, watching what I was eating. And then as soon as I would go out and be at a place where I didn't know how many calories were in the food, I had no idea what I was eating, what the ingredients were, it'd kind of be like, oh, well, you can't track, so just forget about it. And it would be kind of like this little free-for-all, and I would get a break. But then the free-for-all would be like, well, you're already going off the rails. You might as well just really enjoy it, because tomorrow you're going to start tracking and being back on it. But then the free-for-all was so not honoring to my body. I felt so not good that I think the next day I was like, okay, we better get back on it. We better even be more rigid. We better track even harder, be more clear on what we're doing, cut back even more. And then as soon as I would get that moment of not being aware or just choosing to check out because I was so tired of tracking, that it just like perpetuated this roller coaster, and like my body became the enemy. It was like, you cannot be trusted. You will deceive me. And so because I cannot trust you, it's deceptive. I need to use my mind or accountability. And at the time, appetite suppressants weren't really like a big thing, like medications like Ozempic and things like that. Like they weren't really a popular thing. But I think that if that were an option, I probably would have pursued it and taken it, because I just didn't trust in my hunger, and I would have done anything to make my hunger go away. I tried distractions. I tried gum. I tried water. I tried anything to try to like disconnect from the feelings in my body, because I didn't trust in those sensations, the hunger, the fullness. Sometimes I would feel full and I would override it anyway. And so my body became like this place of not trusting it. And I think that the health industry kind of positions it that way. And even though food tracking feels like it's a helpful accountability thing, what we don't realize is that we are having this message of like, count and record, because this cannot be trusted. And deep, painful part of that is that you'll drive further and further and further into distrust, because tracking will never lead to creating trust with the signals of your body. So you'll probably have those moments that as soon as you're not tracking, you're like, oh, I'll have a free-for-all because I don't know how many calories are in this food, or I'm not tracking this food, so I'm going to have a mindless moment, which further perpetuates the distrust and this deeper belief that my body cannot be trusted. And I think that it leads to a lack of fulfillment with our health, because we'll never escape our bodies. Our bodies are with us until the end. And so we can track to try to keep us more accountable. We can use distractions like gum or water to avoid our appetite. We can force and push our bodies into programs even when our bodies resist. We can use appetite suppressants and medications that disconnect the sensations from hunger. But the truth is, it won't ever lead to true freedom or to true trust with our bodies. And the beautiful part is that we can trust our own bodies. And this is no judgment if you've needed distractions or if you've needed medications or appetite suppressants. I hear you. It's a really confusing experience with our bodies when we don't understand how to interpret its communication and trust that communication. So if you think about your body as like, let's just pretend that the body is a partner, that it's like a partnership. If you have a partnership that you do not communicate well, it lies to you, or you don't trust it because you wanted one thing but something else happened, you don't understand it, it might be a difficult relationship. But through patience and dedication and learning how to trust it, we can learn and listen to it. So this isn't a shaming of if you do need appetite suppressants, because I understand. I think once upon a time, I would have been really on board with that for myself because I was really, really confused. But at the same time, whether you're on medications or you're not on medications and you've just been struggling, there can be a deeper understanding. And sometimes all you need is one person to just say, it's possible. You can trust your own body. You can trust yourself. And this was a really special experience for me because I only had one, maybe two people who were like, don't worry, I know you can't trust yourself, but this is totally possible. And it brings up this memory for me where I was at a retreat and I was really, really struggling with trying to track my food and not understanding why it felt like my body was against me. I was trying so hard. I was tracking my food. I was exercising. And every day was just a freaking battle. And I felt way too much self-judgment to like talk to anyone about it. But the pain of it got so big. I was like, I gotta talk to somebody. I just don't know who. And I was at a retreat, and someone who has been a teacher for me, a mentor for me, a friend to me is Kim. And I was like, Kim, I just felt like she was the right one to talk to. I felt really safe with her. And I said, can I talk to you? And I said, I'm so confused. I'm a dietitian. I know so much. I know so much about health. And I just like, I'm so confused. I feel like I have to do all the right things. I'm trying so hard to do the right things, but my body it feels like it's telling me to do something else. And I don't know if I can trust my body. I don't know what to do. And I was like at this point of internal crisis of like, I am trapped because I know so much about health. And yet I just like, I can't do it. And she said, I think you can trust yourself more than what you know. She said, I'll be right back. And so she left the room. She comes back and she said, close your eyes. And I was like, okay. So I closed my eyes. She said, hold out your hand. I held out my hand just flat like this. And she put something on my hand without me looking at it or feeling it. And she said, tell me if your body moves towards it or away from it. And I sat there and I was like, my body moves away from it. And she said, okay, open your eyes. I opened my eyes and it was a lime. And she said, it's a lime. Do you want to eat the lime? And I said, no, I don't want to eat a lime. She said, that's interesting because you moved away from it. Like, I don't actually, that's a no for me. That's like my body was like, nope. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird, interesting. And then she said, okay, close your eyes again. And so I closed my eyes, held out my hand. She put something else in my hand. She said, what does your body do? Does it move towards it or away from it? And I said, I'm really tuning in. And I have to be honest, I don't feel anything. I'm not moving towards it and I'm not moving away from it. And she said, well, open your eyes. I opened my eyes and it was a clementine. And she said, how do you feel about a clementine? And I was like, I feel indifferent. I don't really eat citrus fruits, like hardly ever. It's not an intention, but I never crave oranges. I never crave clementines. I don't dislike them, but I don't really love them. It feels like something I don't want in my stomach. It feels too acidic. I feel indifferent to it. And she said, yeah, like that's what your body did. It just kind of stayed neutral. It wasn't a pulling towards and it wasn't a moving away. It was like neutral. And I was like, that's interesting. So that was the first person who was like, what if you could trust your body's signals? And whether or not you think, okay, that's a weird spiritual woo idea, moving towards, moving away in your body, whether you are on board with that or not on board with that, for me, what it really meant to me was there was one person who said, there's more that you have to learn about being able to just trust your body and its signals. And it felt so empowering to have somebody there say, you can trust yourself. Just keep going, keep learning, keep listening. And I remember around that same time, I remember saying to my sister, gosh, I don't know what I should have for breakfast. I was like torn up about like, do I have a smoothie? What's the right thing to do? And my sister said, what does your body say? What does your body want? And I was like, my body? What does my body want? Like, am I allowed to ask that question? Like, I'm a dietitian. I use everything based on information. Am I allowed to even ask that question? And she kept saying, ask your body, ask your body. And so the two of them became these little guiding lights for me that were like, wait, ask my body? Okay, now I'm onto something here that I wanted to study and understand deeper. So if you don't believe it's possible, maybe you could just borrow the fact from me that I can be that one person to say, you can, and it takes a little bit of deeper self-exploration, of understanding and practicing, and it was so worth it to me to use this kind of practice. And something that also has helped me have this mindset shift around possibility is sometimes there's things that we just don't quite understand. And so if you think about a squirrel intuitively knows what to eat, what to do. What it will do is before the winter, when it's springtime, before it ever has its first winter, it will go and gather seeds and all these different foods, and it will go hide it and bury it in the dirt before it ever experienced winter. So it doesn't need to know information. No one needed to teach it. Winter will be coming. You need to eat this food, and this food. The squirrel intuitively knew that I need to gather this food and I need to go hide it for myself. And if the squirrel didn't do that, it would die in the winter. But because it trusted in its body and its intuition of what to do, the squirrels live. And so I think about that with ourselves. We're so quick to question, if I don't have the right information, I won't know what to do. And I would argue that we know a lot of what to do. We know a lot of what to do, but it gets distorted or we lose that self-trust because we're so pulled into like someone else saying, this is the right thing for you. This is the right thing for you. You can't trust yourself. Measure way. You can't trust yourself. Suppress, numb out, disconnect, avoid, distract. And it's like we're so out here, we forget that like every creature on this planet is born with this gift of being able to sense, when do I need to eat? What is a natural way of eating for me that will allow me to survive and thrive, just like the squirrel does for itself. So I love that. I loved remembering that because I'm like, oh yeah, what if I do actually have more innate intelligence in my body than what I give myself credit for? And what would it look like to play with that and explore this innate intelligence that's inside of my body? So this can be more of a process than like a sexy, quick fix thing. This path might really not be for everyone because it isn't like a quick, fast, sexy path. It's not like the lose 20 pounds in 20 days kind of path. It's just not. it takes a willingness to say, I want to understand and have a relationship with my body. This type of work or exploration is for the kind of person who's like, there's no finish line here. I'm just going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think the paths without a finish line can be the most rewarding paths. But the truth is, it's not the fastest, sexiest path. But I feel for me, it's been the most rewarding. No one will ever take away this relationship I now have with my body. I'll never lose it. I'll never be on it or off of it. I see it as this growing relationship. I trust my body so much, and it gets deeper and deeper and better and more fascinating. So it might not be for everybody. It might not be the quickest way. Even I'm assuming that this video itself might be kind of lengthy. We've got a lot to do and to go through and perspective shifts to have. So if you're along for the ride, buckle up, let's go. And we have a lot to unpack here. So here's everything that we're going to cover when we talk about the body. First, I want to talk about what does it mean to listen to the body? What is that communication like? How do you sense it? How do you feel it? What does it feel like? We're going to talk about interpreting that language of the body. And then we're going to talk about why do we get disconnected from being able to properly sense hunger, fullness, what our body is really telling us. Why do we get disconnected from that? And then you end up having to track your food or suppress your appetite, or you can't trust your body. I'm going to break that down. And then I'm going to share what is the step-by-step process of being able to pick up and fine-tune those signals again so that you can properly perceive your hunger, your fullness, and trust your body signals. And then finally, how can we use this skill of listening to the body to be able to achieve our health goals, to be able to actually lose weight, to stop emotional eating and these moments of where we don't trust our bodies and feel out of control. So I'm going to break all of that down. So first, let's start with, what does it mean to listen to your body? Like, how do I hear it? What does it sound like? What is that communication like? Well, it's really just picking up the proper signals that your body is sending you. So the body's job is to send signals of what is happening inside of the body. And this is very different from the signals of the mind. So in part 2 of this Deeper Than Dieting series, we talked about the mind. And the language of the mind, how our mind communicates to us, is like in concrete thought. So it might sound like words. It might sound like someone is talking to you. That's how the mind communicates. The body communicates in different ways. It's a little bit more subtle. It's more through sensation. And so it's almost like somebody with a different language is in this half of your body or this portion of your body, the lower portion, and it's using different ways to like, hey, I'm getting your attention. And we, unfortunately, don't spend a lot of time learning like, what is that information or what is my body communicating to me? And it's really cool that we can, once we have awareness of that, we can really fine tune and notice, oh yeah, it's so obvious. The communication is so different between my mind and body, but they're both doing important things. So the mind, like I said, it's concrete thought. The body, its job is to sense the environment, the outer environment and our inner environment, and respond to it. So the researcher Bruce Lipton, he talks about how everything in our bodies is just a series of sending a signal to a receptor, and then the body responds to that signal. So for example, if it is cold outside, the cold air, the molecules in the air are the signal. That will bind onto the receptors of the skin. The skin will receive the information. It is cold outside. It'll send a signal through the body to the brain, and then the body responds and we'll get goosebumps. Or similarly, if it's hot outside, there's heat, the temperature rises. The skin will receive that information. The heat is a signal, the molecules, it'll reach the skin. The skin will adapt by relaxing, releasing sweat to cool the body. And so the body is constantly grabbing information and then responding. This happens internally as well. Let's say if our thoughts are, oh, I'm afraid, there's a fear, maybe you're watching a scary movie, and then your internal state is like, there's a fear, there's something that's wrong. And so that will send a signal to your body. Your heart starts increasing. Your heart rate will start increasing. Your body will respond. So everything in our bodies are constant direct feedback. If you eat a certain amount of food, the way our bodies are designed is that if you eat a certain amount of food and calories, that information will get processed in your digestive tract, and then that information will get sent up your vagus nerve, up through your brain, and then get processed in the limbic system to send the information. We've had adequate calories for the body's needs, and then that will send a series of information so that you feel full. It'll send out full satiety hormones that make you feel the sensation of being full. And then as your energy stores go down, your body senses, okay, there's low energy. And then so it'll send that information up to the brain that will get processed in the brain. And then the brain will send out those hunger hormones that make you feel hungry. So the body is just incredible. Its design is just impeccable. The way that it just responds and it adapts, and it's constantly being fed information of everything. And as soon as we get a little bit dehydrated, I believe it's when our bodies are like 2 or 3% dehydrated, it will send the signal, water levels are going low. Let's turn on the thirst mechanism. So what's amazing is the body is getting constant feedback from the outside environment and from the inside environment. This is really important to know, because what we want to know is that the body, one, it speaks to us in different ways through sensations, right? What does hunger feel like? What does fullness feel like? We need to pick up and fine tune that sensation. But also, if we're not connected and we're not aware of it, if we're not listening to it, then we won't pick up that signal, and the signal can actually get distorted and become really hard to understand and communicate with. So first, when I talk about what does the body's communication sound and feel like, the brain is like thought, the body is more through sensation, hunger, fullness, changes. It's not going to sound like concrete thought. And so it takes a little bit more of being willing to explore those subtleties of the body. But when you do, you start to really pick it up. So now let's talk about, well, why do we get disconnected from, why can't I just feel my hunger, eat some food, be done, feel my fullness? Okay, I got the signal, now I can walk away. Why does it sometimes feel like I don't know if I'm hungry or if I'm full? I don't know or I know that I'm full, but I'm overriding it. Like, what is happening? Why can't I trust this body? There's a physiological process that's happening inside of the body. And one is that our awareness, which is like what we're paying attention to, moves up into the mind instead of being in the body. And so when we're born, we all have a connection of our body, of our mind. We have this full body connection. Our mind and our bodies are working together. Our mind is understanding things and our bodies are sending signals. Babies can sense when they need food and they'll cry, and they're very tapped into it. As soon as they're well fed, they'll be done. They can feel it. They can sense it properly. And so we're all born this way. But there's really 2 reasons of why we lose that trust in that sensation. The first is that we live in a culture that promotes disembodiment, which is embodiment is having this awareness and being able to perceive what's happening inside of your body. This disembodiment it's a culture that pulls our awareness up into our minds and away from our bodies. And so all of our attention is kind of pulled out here or pulled into our mind. So we're either thinking about food, we're tracking food, we're using information, or we're pulled into just stimulation, right? Our whole environment, like our stoplights, our TVs, our even books, even social media. And it's not that these things are wrong or bad, but we start to lose the awareness of what's happening inside of here. And then when we go to eat, we sit down to eat, and we're just like, maybe we're working at the same time, or we're eating really fast, or we're standing, or we're driving, and we're not even paying attention. And it becomes this very unconscious act of being so disconnected from our bodies. And we're either, our focus is out here or our focus is out here. And unfortunately, we're just not in a society that encourages us to reflect inward and say, how is my body feeling? What is that signal? Can I interpret it? Can I listen and tune into this language? Can I say, hey, what does my body really need right now? Am I hungry? Am I full? We're more like we're pushed into this society of schedule and timing, and you eat at noon and you eat this much, and this is just your portion, and focus out here and everything attention is out here. So we're in a culture that promotes disembodiment, like leaving our awareness out of our bodies, focusing out here, focusing in our mind, and really primed to not trust ourselves with all of the appetite suppressants, all of the food tracking programs, all of the accountability programs. Like, don't trust yourself. You need to measure it instead because you can't trust this. So we're never really taught how to trust it. The second reason why we lose this connection is something that is known as the mind-body split, which I learned this from the psychologist Alexander Lowen. I learned from his son, and Alexander Lowen, I believe, published a bunch of books in psychology on this idea around the mind-body split. And what he talks about is that when we're born, the mind and the body are together in harmony. And this comes down to the two different jobs of the mind and the body. So the mind's job, which we talked about in part 2, is safety. So remember that this is really key. The mind's job is safety. We talked about this in part 2. So the mind will collect information from the past to predict the future. So when your awareness is in your mind, you're living in safety mechanisms. You're constantly thinking about the past, predicting the future. What do I need to do? What could go wrong? What could happen? It's a really great, valuable tool for risk assessment. But if you are the kind of person that lives in your mind, you might feel like your attention is all over the place. You're constantly thinking. You can't sit still. You cannot sit still in meditation. It makes you too uncomfortable, or you don't have the time, or you say that you're bad at it. And you're living in safety mechanisms. You're constantly thinking, or you're thinking about the past, or you're thinking about the future. And so when your awareness is in your mind is not what actually will properly perceive how much food that you ate. That comes from the body. This is where we feel sensations of hunger and fullness. The mind, because it's safety mechanisms, is where we get cravings. So if you live in your mind, it can get really confusing because the mind will create cravings for protection, for safety mechanisms. If something might go wrong in the future and you're anxious about the future, you're nervous about the future, that's going to increase the drive for calories and sugar because that's a safety protective mechanism. And you won't really feel your hunger and fullness. So the body's job is to do what we talked about earlier, which is to perceive information from the environment. So I like to think of the body as being like truth, because if you feel cold, it'll get cold. If it's hot, it'll sweat. You won't start thinking about a hot summer day and start sweating, or thinking about the cold and be all of a sudden freezing. It's not based on the past or on the future. Your body is truth. It sends information on what is happening right now. And so if we can keep our awareness in the body and feel what's happening inside of the body, then we are connected to how much food do we need to eat and those proper signals and the sensations that are in the body. So the body's job is to take information and give that real-time information of hunger and fullness. The mind's job is to take information from the past to predict the future and do everything for safety. So when your awareness is in the body, when you're paying attention to your body, you can feel the truth, your hunger, your fullness. You can feel the proper, true sensations because you eat the food. That information gets processed in the gut of how many calories you ate. That information actually gets sent up the vagus nerve. It gets processed in the limbic system of the brain. Your brain gets the information that you've had enough food to eat. That releases the hormones that you're full. And then you feel that fullness in your stomach and in your body. When you live with your awareness up in your mind, you have racing thoughts all the time. All of your awareness is up here. You can't properly sense that feeling of fullness, the truth that's in the body. So you're living in a place of cravings. And so what happens is when your awareness is up in your mind, you can't properly feel if you're hungry or if you're full. And this happens also when your nervous system gets activated, when you're under stress. When you are under stress, the signal that gets sent up the vagus nerve up into the brain, that signal gets disconnected from that area of the brain. That part of the brain becomes inactive during a stressed state. So that means that when you're in a stressed state, your brain isn't receiving the information that you ate enough food or not. So now you look down and you're like, well, I ate a whole plate, but the information never made it it didn't get processed in the limbic system in the brain. So that fullness signal, the satiety signal, didn't get sent back to my body that says I had enough food to eat. This is why stress and binge eating or overeating go hand in hand. So then let's say that you have high stress and you're not receiving the signal that you had enough food to eat, and you try to restrict your food and you try to count your calories and you're trying to log your food, but you're still not getting the signal that you're full. So you're like, I'm writing it down, I'm tracking. Why does this feel so hard? Because you can see on your sheet of paper that you've had plenty of food, but your brain didn't get the signal that you had enough food. And so you don't quite hit that satisfaction point. So it is critical. It is so important that if you want to trust yourself with food, it's not so much about being more accountable. It's learning how to calm that stressed nervous system state so that you can start sensing how much food you actually need and feeling those fullness, those satiety signals inside of your body. It makes all the difference. When I didn't understand this process, when I didn't understand what was happening, my body was really in a stress state. And I was writing down my food, and I was like, my food log says that I should stop eating, but I still feel hungry. Why can't I trust myself? Should I restrict more? Should I leave more foods out of the house? When I learned about this, and I started learning how to regulate my nervous system and bring my awareness back into my body and perceiving my signals, now I don't need to track my food because I can feel my hunger and my fullness. I can feel it now. It had nothing to do with accountability and tracking. It had everything to do with me being able to properly sense my hunger and my fullness. And now I don't think about food all day long. I don't have to track my food all day long because I can properly perceive those signals. This one thing made all the difference. So I mentioned before this mind-body split, and I haven't really explained it yet. What happens with a mind-body split? Why do we get disconnected and the nervous system gets activated? Well, Alexander Lowen talks about how at any point in life, if it becomes uncomfortable to have our awareness in the body, then we'll move our awareness up into the mind. So if at some point, maybe you had a intense emotional experience, or as a kid, you had emotional neglect. Your parents weren't super loving. You didn't get your needs met. Maybe you were crying and they didn't hold you and comfort you, or there was alcohol in the home, or there was fighting, or your emotions weren't really safe to feel, or you went through a traumatic experience, or you had even just a chapter when you were in elementary school or in middle school or in high school, like many of us do, that is just heartbreaking or really difficult to be with those emotions. Or could even be a physical pain inside the body. It could actually be physical abuse. It could be mental, emotional, physical, anything that when your awareness is in your body, it hits the tipping point of, this is too much for me to experience. So what the mind does is the mind wants to try to protect us, because if the emotions are in the body, emotions and physical sensations are in the body. So if it becomes too uncomfortable, too unbearing to be with an experience, awareness will move from the body and up into the mind, and then the body becomes disconnected, meaning that you're not perceiving anything that's happening in here. So it's protecting you from emotions or physical pain. But at the same time, what happens is you also lose connection to feeling your hunger, your fullness, your feelings. And so around this time, when I went through a very emotional chapter that was too difficult to feel, that was a lot for me, I almost turned to this numbness with my body. where I couldn't tell if I was really hungry. I couldn't tell if I was full. I was craving food all the time. And I also didn't know what I was feeling. I was anxious all the time because I didn't understand my emotions and what I was feeling. And instead of necessarily feeling unhappy, I think I felt nothing. Like I felt very empty inside. And I think that emptiness created this stimulation for something, just to like feel something, but I was too afraid of feeling my emotions. And so I think it created more of a craving for more food or something that would make me feel more. Is it doing better with work? Is it achievement? Is it people? Is it exciting peak experiences? I got like really into skydiving and like these things that would create a feeling inside of me. But because I wasn't actually really tuned into my body and willing to really feel the emotions that I was afraid to feel, I think I felt disconnected and I felt nothing. And so my body became a very confusing thing. And I didn't really understand it. I didn't know what my emotions were that I was feeling. I couldn't interpret my hunger, my fullness. I couldn't trust myself. And so all my awareness went up into my mind. And that's when I was thinking all the time. I was anxious. I was worried. I was tracking all of my food. Everything was in my mind. And so I think I was really experiencing this mind-body split of where the mind wants to protect us from the uncomfortable, either physical pain, emotional pain, whatever the pain is that is being experienced in the body. And then the mind and the body almost turn against each other, where the mind is like, I don't trust you because the feelings hurt or the physical pain hurts. And so coming back into listening and trusting our bodies might be a really slow process of, is it safe for me to move my awareness back into my body? And that's really where the deep trust in the healing really began. It was never in using more of my mind. It was never in more motivation. It was never in more restriction. It was really getting honest and asking myself, what have I been unwilling to experience in my body? A feeling, an emotion, a sensation, a truth that I don't want to look at or feel and experience. And when I really met myself with that honesty, that's where the real work and the self-trust really began. So to heal this mind-body split, this disconnection, it's about coming into the body again. And again, I know that sometimes this awareness in the mind is really important. Sometimes the mind-body split is a beautiful protective strategy if there have been really difficult emotions or difficult periods in life or chapters of where you're like, yeah, I'm not ready to pop open that can of moving my awareness into my body. My body is scary. I'm afraid of feeling and what might come up. And so this is a really, really important process to not force yourself into, yes, I need to be in my body, especially because Gina said so, and I have to do what she says, and I have to get there, and I have to connect in this way. But to really feel the discernment for yourself and say, am I ready to feel again my feelings, my hunger, my fullness? Because it opens everything. It pops open. For me, it put me into a messy chapter of not really understanding my hunger, my fullness, my feelings, because there was so much that had been dormant and disconnected from for so long. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really know what my body's experiencing. I don't know what I'm feeling. This is confusing. It was like I was learning Spanish for the first time, and I had no idea how to speak the language, what it was telling me. It was messy, but the truth is it was an investment. It was an investment to have a messy period of time where I could learn about what the heck am I feeling, because I have been numb to it for a really long time. So that's why we get disconnected from our bodies. Is one, we're in a culture of disembodiment. It pulls our awareness out here. We are not encouraged to come and move our awareness into our bodies. And then 2, if a really uncomfortable experience happens physically or emotionally, we might have this experience of the mind-body split where our awareness moves out of our body and up into our minds, but we'll never be able to really trust ourselves with food if our awareness is in our minds, because your mind is safety mechanisms. Your body is what perceives proper hunger and fullness. So if you're living in your mind, you can't heal your relationship by living in your mind. You can't rely on food tracking, counting, this mind-based approach, and even numbing yourself out from your hunger and disconnecting from it. It's not going to lead to that deep self-trust of being able to perceive and listen to your body and trust in those signals. And so anyone really can do it, but it's not going to be through the mind. It's going to be through, as you're ready, step by step, bringing your awareness down into the body and learning that communication. So how do we start moving our awareness into the body? You might be like, yeah, wow, I've been really disconnected from my body. I live in my mind. I don't trust myself with food. I don't understand what I'm feeling. Like, where do I even begin? I think of 4 different ways of how we can start picking up these signals and properly interpreting them. Again, this is a process. It takes a little bit of commitment and dedication. And the first way to start bringing your awareness down into your body is through movement. And movement is not through burning calories or for exercise. It's actually to be able to connect your mind and body again. If you think about it, I cannot move my arm unless my mind connects to my arm to move it. Like, I need to connect mind and body. I could maybe not pay attention, but really it takes a signal, it takes a thought to my body to move my body. So any kind of movement, if you slow down enough to really tune in and notice, can I move my body and how does it feel in moving? This could be something slow like yoga, gentle walking, not for exercise, but just for noticing and tuning into your body. What does it feel like when your feet hit the ground? And what does it feel like as you're moving? You could even do gentle stretching. What does this feel like inside of my body? Things like Tai Chi or things that are very slow. Was really helpful for me was to spend some time just closing my eyes and just kind of like gently moving my body around. And then I'd start to notice, oh yeah, I didn't notice that there before. What's that sensation? Oh, there's tightness there. Oh, like I'm just kind of gently moving to bring that awareness back into my body. So I'm connecting my mind back into different areas of my body. So movement is beautiful. Don't underestimate the power of very gentle movement and not this forced, intense, exercisey movement for this purpose. The second one is breathing. Breathing is very, very, very important in this process because your breath is like the bridge. It's the bridge between the mind and the body. So if your awareness is up here in your mind and you take a breath, it like heightens the awareness of what's happening inside of your body. Now you're moving your awareness down into your body. The other thing that you're doing with your breath is you can bring cortisol down. You can regulate your nervous system right there on the spot. And then that helps you properly perceive your hunger and your fullness. So I think one of the most valuable tools before eating is to start using your breath. Taking a few breaths before eating, that's going to help lower stress so that you get that mind and body connection so that when you eat, you can properly feel fullness and hunger. This is really an important part of being able to practice mindful eating or intuitive eating that I think is really missed. If you're in that stressed nervous system state, it's going to be probably near impossible to properly perceive your hunger and your fullness. So we use that breath to calm the nervous system. I have all of my students practice this every single week. We meet every single week, and every week I have them practicing. And when you practice, you think of that as like game day. You're practicing for those important moments in life. Don't wait until you're about to sit down and eat and then say, I'm bad at it. Of course, if you go shoot your first tube without practicing, you're going to be bad at it. So lock that in, practice using that breath throughout the day. I think it's one of the most valuable things that you could do to, one, start moving your awareness from up in your mind down in your body. But before eating, regulating your nervous system, you get that mind-body connection again. You can start to properly pick up those signals. The third is feeling, starting to tune into your emotions. Emotions live in the body, and it's hard to trust our body if we don't trust one aspect of it, which is our feelings. Of course, this process might need to be really slow if you've been really uncomfortable with feeling your feelings. But what I noticed is when I would start to tune in and just start labeling, what am I feeling today? What am I feeling today? I could start getting more in tune with my emotions and what I was feeling. And instead of being afraid and shaming the emotions that were in my body, I started to see them as very valuable. They were also a communication from my body. Instead of saying anxiety is bad, sadness is bad, that all of these different bad feelings were unwanted, when I did that, I tried to shove them down in my body and not pay attention, and my awareness would move up into my mind for protection. When I said all feelings are okay, they're all great, not great, great's the wrong word, but when all feelings are okay, my awareness would start to come into my mind and I would in my body, and I would start to just perceive, what does that emotion feel like if I didn't label it as bad? And now my emotions, I really love listening to them because they show me contrast. They show me what is working in my life and what is not. I'm like, oh, I feel anxious about this. What does this have to tell me? It tells me there's something I need to think about, something maybe I'm not prepared for, something I'm worried about. I should listen to that anxiety and feel what it has to tell me. Or I'm feeling sad. What does sadness have to tell me? Is there something present day that I need to be exploring and acknowledging? Is there something from my past that I haven't felt? And we're really using that emotion as an inner guide to show us contrast. What brings me joy? What brings me happiness? What brings me play? I can feel the different emotions and trust all of them, that they're going to point me, where do I need healing? Where are the things in life that I love? Can they show me contrast and where to go next, and trusting them? And that is truly the path to healing emotional eating. Emotional eating is, I need pleasure and I need to disconnect when the feelings in my body are too uncomfortable for me to be with. And again, might be a really slow process. This is not to say that uncomfortable or emotions are maybe too difficult to experience. Sometimes we need support first. Sometimes we're not ready. And that's where the discernment comes in. It's not to minimize that sometimes the pain of emotions are just too big, and we actually need food, and we need to not trust our bodies, and we need to not listen to be able to get through a really difficult experience. A lot of people will ask me, like, why can't I just listen to my body? And I'm like, tell me what you're going through right now. And they're like, oh man, things are really hard. I'm really stressed. I'm just like feeling a lot of pain from this experience, or I'm really upset, or I'm overly stressed. And there's just something that they haven't quite been ready to feel in their body and accept and experience. But when you are ready, that's the next breadcrumb on the trail. That's what allows us to heal emotional eating, is to say, I'm okay with feeling my emotions, and I want to feel them and get to know them and allow them to be my guide and my teacher for where I really need to go next. And so this can be one of the most powerful tools for trusting our own bodies. And there's this quote that emotions are the language of the soul. And I think that that's so beautiful, because our emotions really can tell us this deep part of ourselves of, where are we missing fulfillment? Where are we sad? Where are we maybe resentful? What lights us up? What pulls us by desire? And if we live in our minds and we don't feel that radical range of feelings, we miss this amazing opportunity to speak to a place within us that is not just the mind and safety mechanisms and logic, but from this really deep place from our soul that is like, here's where you go next. And so by coming into the body, it can open up a deeper self-discovery that is so much more than healing the relationship with food. It's so much more than trusting ourselves with food. It's so much more than weight loss or a health program. By coming into the body, we can, for maybe the first time ever, trust and feel the sensations. We can feel when I'm feeling something that tells me my heart needs healing, or this is pulling me by desire. This is what I'm excited about. This is what I'm still hurt about. It becomes a communication with a deeper part of ourselves that is so much deeper than a surface level idea about health. And then that is when you reach down to the very deep core of what does health really mean? Where am I deeply holding on to sadness or a lack of fulfillment, and I need food and pleasure because I'm not hitting that spot? And where can I trust in my emotions so deeply to guide me and let me know when that is off? And then when I get that information that something is off in my life, or something has the opportunity to pull me into joy, and I really get honest and I feel that, and I even feel the pain of it, then I can continue to create a life that really feels nourishing to me, and I can eat the delicious food, but I don't have to have the delicious food to try to fill this unmet need within me. So the body has become my trusting, guiding light to show me where are places of where I feel sadness or grief or lack of fulfillment. And if I don't feel the honest truth of that, I will probably need something outside of me to try to create the feeling of wholeness or fulfillment or pleasure. And there's no judgment in that. But the awareness is really helpful when we can trust ourselves to come and meet our bodies with true honesty. This is what my feelings are. Then we can trust in those feelings to create a life of that really hits a nourishing spot, so that we don't become dependent or on foods to do it for us. Especially because if there's a dependence on food to do it for you, but then you get rid of the food because it doesn't align with your diet program, it's going to feel depressing. It's going to feel anxious. It's going to feel like you lost a piece of fulfillment. If you address the honest truth that maybe there's a part that doesn't feel happy or fulfilled or loved, or there's a part of that food has been a dependence to fill that space, now we can start exploring, wow, what does my body have to teach me about opportunities for where my life can change and evolve, so that I can truly hit that deeply nourishing place of fulfillment and love and joy, and then I can eat the cookie and I don't depend on the cookie for my love and my joy and my fulfillment. But I need to let the body tell me when I'm needing those things. When am I needing that feeling of excitement and pleasure and love and joy? And where can I get curious with the question of, now where can I go create it, feel it, find it? So the third way of coming into the bodies is feeling our emotions and exploring them and trusting them. And then the fourth one is called interoceptive awareness. And that is by moving our awareness to the inside of our bodies. And that's just a practice, because all of our attention is always out here. And so what you can do right now just to practice it is notice if you can bring awareness to your body as you're looking at maybe the screen or you're listening to me talk. See if you can hold both at the same time. I have awareness of myself and my body, and I have awareness out here. As I'm practicing to feel the signals inside of my body as I'm holding an awareness out there, now I can be tuned in and questioning, am I hungry? What's going on in there? And I can hold that awareness and pick up that awareness as I also have awareness out there. So throughout the day, I can also be pay attention to the world, but I can still hold this relationship with myself and my body and say, wait, does my body need food? Does it need water? What's happening? And this is a practice. This is a reconnection. And so we want to practice this often. I think it's really helpful to do meditations. I have all of my Mastering Mindfulness students do meditations where they're practicing to connect the mind to the body, and they're just practicing. It's just a practice that you do again and again and again. So meditation can be really helpful for this interoceptive awareness, just getting curious throughout the day. Am I hungry? So that you're picking up and you're really learning and practicing that language. So if it hasn't worked in the past to feel your hunger and your fullness and to really trust in those sensations, what is probably happening is that your awareness is up in your mind, and maybe you're in a stressed state. And awareness is up here, you're in a stress state, so you're not properly picking up those signals. So you really want to practice those 4 things that we discussed so that you can move your awareness back down into your body, regulate your nervous system, properly pick up those signals, and then you need to practice, and you need to practice often. So thinking of every meal as a practice. In part 1 of this series, I talked about how we need to move through these stages of letting go of the shame and judgment, getting more curious, seeing every meal as practice, and then that's how we move forward to mastery. We don't go from never doing it to trying it once and then being like, I can't do it. We need to move through the steps and knowing what are the methods to each step to be able to keep practicing. So I really went pretty deep on a lot of the stuff today and a lot of the science of how do we reconnect. What is really amazing is when you do start doing this inner exploration, when you're like, I want to get to know my body, I want to have a relationship with it. And that's what it is. If it's been a difficult relationship, you might be like, yeah, I don't trust you. Our communication has been garbage. I don't understand you. It's been confusing. I don't trust you. And a beautiful place to begin is to say, I want to get to know you. I don't understand you right now. We've been disconnected for a long time, but I'm here to listen to you really unconditionally. And when you do that, you realize that inside the body, there's this infinite mystery to explore. And the reason why is because, one, our bodies hold so much wisdom and magic. One, I gave the squirrel example. So I wonder what kind of intuitive wisdom we have that we can explore and play with. Even like our own cells, there's a lot of research done by Bruce Lipton, that our cells hold its own cellular memory and memory within our DNA. There was the book, It Didn't Start With You. He talks about how our DNA holds information and it holds memory. And he talks about the study that was done in mice, where they took mice and they exposed them to a really loud noise. And that loud noise was like traumatic for the mouse. And then when they exposed them to the loud noise, they had the mouse smell the scent of lavender. And they did it again and again and again. And then they had those mice have a generation of babies. They didn't do anything with that generation of babies. Then they had those mice have another generation of babies. So this is like now the grand baby mice. They didn't expose them to the loud noise, but they did expose them to lavender, and they saw their stress response inside of their bodies heighten and increase. So that was how they knew that trauma, stress, information gets passed down within the DNA between generation to generation. And so this makes us wonder, inside of my body, if I have a visceral reaction to something, a nervous system response, who knows what it's about? Or who knows what kind of information is stored in my DNA? Maybe your grandparents went through a depression of when there wasn't enough food or there wasn't enough money. And so they had maybe worry that there isn't enough food. And so maybe they learned multiple generations ago that we need to overeat for protection and survival. And maybe that feeling, that whether it's in the DNA or whether it was just an idea that got passed down, a natural way of eating, like overeating, got passed down to your parents and then got passed down to you as a survival strategy, that might be something that's like, wow, I feel in my body like there's not enough food, but there is enough food. Wow, I wonder where this came from, where this got passed down to. And we can start to feel, was this passed down to me as a survival strategy, but it's not meeting me where I'm at because I have plenty of food? Is that something that I actually want to shift that internal feeling so that I don't always feel like I'm in scarcity with food? So it's really wild that, yeah, surface, I don't want to say surface, our first initial tuning of the body might be, am I hungry? Am I full? What are my emotions? That will get us really, really far. That is awesome communication to start perceiving those three things. I love just picking up on those senses and those sensations. A deeper infinite exploration, if we were going further out into outer space, but within our bodies, and we're exploring beyond the moon, we might start noticing, what are the feelings that I have that feel older than me in my generation? What is my body communicating to me? Were there experiences that were stored in the cells of my body from birth? Are there feelings, experiences? And so when we start to trust this, we can fine tune its signals. And we can also get to know just how is our body communicating to us. One of the questions that somebody had asked related to this was like, how do I even know if a food is resonating with me, if my body has enough water or not? Well, we can start exploring that communication. Sometimes you do need to use health information. Sometimes you might not know. Like, I don't know if apples resonate with my body or not. You could maybe sense and feel it, like I talked about earlier in this session about sensing, does your body want it or not? You could try that. You also just might not know, and you might need to use information. Does this make sense to me? But you also might notice, how does my body communicate to me? Do I eat a food and I get bloated? Do I eat a food and get a skin rash? Do I eat, a food and I get tired? Or do I have good energy? And you can start picking that up. If you notice, if you're drinking water and you go to the bathroom and your pee is dark, that's a sign my body's letting me know I need more water. If it's like pure clear, maybe I overhydrated, maybe it's too much water. How does my body physically feel with my energy, with my thirst? What is my body responding to me? And so we're collecting information from everywhere. And that's really the place that you want to be with when you're working with your body, is that you're using all of its intelligence. You are using the mind. You're using the mind and you're like, what would be the best choice for me based on what I know with nutrition and health? And then I'm checking in with my body. What does my body say? Maybe before eating, does it feel like I'm moving towards it? Does it feel expansive? Does it feel contracting? Like, ooh, I don't want that. Does it feel, when I do eat the food, did it feel good? Did it feel nourishing? Did I have good energy? Was I clear? Or did I feel tired and it feels like it gave me inflammation and my joints hurt and my skin got weird? Your body may or may not respond to you in that way, but you can start to notice, what are the different signs of communication within my body that can give me these little clues of what should I do? And I had one of my students who he was like, don't tell me not to drink coffee because I love coffee. And I was like, okay, I won't tell you what to drink coffee or not drink coffee, but just pay attention to how your body feels. Notice what you know. Notice when you drink coffee, how do you feel? And then he came back and he said, oh my gosh, I used to drink coffee all day long, but I realized after my second cup, I don't need it. I'm jittery, I don't feel well, but I always just drank it because that's just what I did. And so I never had to tell him to stop drinking coffee, but he started to tune in and realize my body doesn't even feel good. So then he ended up switching to 1 cup of coffee, and he was like, this is actually what feels perfect for me, but no one ever told me to pay attention to that. So he was able to change his lifestyle into something that was healthier for his body without having to willpower and force himself to do it. If I would have told him from the beginning, don't drink coffee, he would have rebelled against me. But when I said, tune in and listen to your body, he started making changes because he's like, oh yeah, I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel like crap. So what is so cool is our body can give us this direct information. We can perceive our feelings and let that guide us in our life. Our emotions can be amazing navigators for where we need to go next. Our body's response can tell us what foods are resonating with our bodies. And even if we want to sit with our bodies and go deeper, it can open up this infinite exploration of what else do I have to learn or to feel within my body. And I'm gonna read this to you. But because I fell into fascination one day with my body, and I was like, whoa, I shifted my perspective on it. And so I wrote a poem about the body that I'm going to read to you. And wow, it was almost exactly 1 year ago that I'm seeing the date on here. And it's called A Love Affair. have an infatuation, a mysterious love affair. It's the mysteries inside my body, a magnificence that's rare. I'm lost in awe and fascination that someone's love-making once became this creation. It's so perfectly designed, it's driving me out of my mind. It holds the secrets of my ancestors, the wild jungle of my feelings, the subtle guidance of my knowing, the joy I get just for being, the ability to come from nothing and then turn into life, trusting in my heartbeat while I sleep late at night. My body holds the secrets and mysteries I may never know, but it's not about the answers. It's the journey into the unknown. It's laying in bed at night, filled with so much awe. I mean, how could anything so magical be wrong or even flawed? And just when I think I know this body oh so well, I just close my eyes and it continues to have a story to tell. So that was my shift into just feeling into the fascination and the beautiful mystery of the body. And so I know it can be really challenging if you have felt really confused with your body and I don't trust it. And it takes time and it takes patience and it takes a willingness to meet it every single day as a new relationship of I'm learning how to listen to you, I'm learning how to trust you. And maybe there has been many, many years of fighting or maybe unfelt feelings that have been in there. So this is the type of experience that needs to be slow, gentle, process work that is consistent. Even though it's gentle, we want to stay on it because we are in a society that wants to pull us out in a way, and then we get confused and it's why don't I trust myself? But if we can shift into our bodies and see this as this is a relationship that means more to me than anything, I want to practice all day long, tuning in, listening, practicing. And it became so helpful for me to look at my body as something. The relationship with myself is something I was studying, something I was mastering. I was fine-tuning and getting to know. I was sharpening that knife. It won't happen instantly. It won't happen easily. But the rewards on the other side is that we get to go on a deeper self-exploration beyond this confusion of I don't understand you. And then we start tuning in and we're oh, I feel you. There's feelings that are here. This is why I still feel hungry. It's because my nervous system is dysregulated. I need to really fine tune these sensations and this communication. So I hope that this was helpful to start learning about your body. This would have probably brought me so much more understanding and so much more compassion if I would have known this a long time ago. It took me many years of reading a lot of books around psychology, studying a lot about science and the nervous system and the brain and how it all gets disconnected. And then also many, many days and hours of self-study and many people who helped me learn to trust my body and listen to it, and many different coaches and many different mentors and a lot of nights reading and a lot of days just in a lot of introspection. So I hope that this maybe gave you a shortcut or a breadcrumb on your trail. If you thought it was helpful, I would love if you gave it some love or if you let me know what you thought of it. It helps me know, should I make more videos here? Is this helpful? Is this insightful? And where I am is that I'm really just sharing everything that has been helpful for me. So I hope you found this helpful and insightful. This was really all about diving into a more intimate relationship with your own body, learning how to communicate with it, trust it, learning how to listen to it to guide your eating. And in part 4 of the series, we're going to go into the relationship with food and food cravings. We're going to unpack all of that. So you can subscribe if you want to get notified when part 4 comes out. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on this one. And I'll see you in the next series.